From a mysterious plane abandoned in the jungle of Indonesia, to a random biplane found deep in the forest of northern Poland, and even the creepiest airplane graveyard you've ever seen. Here are 10 of the most mysterious abandoned planes around the world. Number 10. The Paradise Plane. There is a Boeing 737 aircraft abandoned seemingly in the middle of the jungle in Bali. It's not at an airport. It's not sitting in a plane graveyard. Instead, it's simply in an open field at the edge of the forest and near a limestone quarry. But the weirdest part is that nobody knows how in the world it got there. The plane just kind of showed up, parked itself, and then whoever was in the cockpit climbed down the stairs and simply walked away. It was like some kind of magic trick. Abracadabra. Poof. There's a plane. You would think that somebody would know something about a missing Boeing 737, but that's just not the case. There was some chit-chat a few years ago about turning the airplane into a hipster-like restaurant for tourists, but it never happened. There's a shabby hut by the plane that somebody may or may not have been living in, and absolutely nothing is being done with the aircraft. Still, it managed to turn into a tourist destination all on its own, as eager backpackers hunted out the mysterious aircraft, passing on the legend one brave and curious tourist at a time. Number 9. The Luftwaffe FW190. In 1989, a hiker discovered a German warplane from World War II hiding between the tall trees in a slight forest clearing just outside the city of St. Petersburg, Russia. The mysterious plane is a Focke-Wulf 190, also known as an FW190. It was used by the Germans in the Luftwaffe, their deadly air force that disseminated the Allies during wartime. This particular aircraft was fashioned in 1943, built in a factory in the German city of Bremen. But just how on earth did it end up in a Russian forest? Who flew this plane? According to War History Online, the pilot's name was Paul Ratz. He crashed the plane behind enemy lines in July of 1943 while carrying a huge 550-pound bomb to Leningrad, the former St. Petersburg. This particular siege was one of the biggest and bloodiest battles of World War II. Many hundreds of thousands died on both sides. He was shot down by artillery cannon fire and had to make an emergency landing. When he tried to get back to a more friendly territory, he was captured by the Russians and sent to a POW camp until 1949. He died 40 years later exactly, which was a very spooky coincidence, seeing as that was the year the plane was found. But he never knew about the recovery of the airplane. You know, since he was dead. This plane was retrieved by helicopter and fixed by restoration professionals in the United Kingdom. During the restoration process, it was found that the fuel lines were blocked, and there was a cloth rag shoved into the engine. The engine had only been put in a few short days before Ratz took off. Allied POWs frequently worked in German factories, so it is entirely possible that one of them sabotaged the engine. It's now the only FW190 that still functions. Number 8. The Caspian Sea Monster. The Caspian Sea Monster really does look like a sea monster. It looks like a gigantic aquatic beast resting on the western shores of the Caspian Sea. However, it's not a monster at all. It is a weird aircraft that had been abandoned for over 30 years. The aircraft was abandoned after the collapse of the Soviet Union in the 1990s and condemned to slowly rust at the Kaspiysk naval base. But just what is this bizarre-looking aircraft? It was an experimental hybrid between an airplane and a ship designed to move over water without ever touching the water. The Russians called it a creepiest, and it's actually classified as a ship by the International Maritime Organization, despite the fact it flies and doesn't sail. It was designed for speed and stealth, with the capability of skimming across the surface of any body of water at a height of between 3 and 16 feet. This meant the aircraft could not be detected by radar. The Soviet Union loved its secrets during the Cold War, and tried their best to create the most powerful version of an creepiest, probably with nefarious intent. Their best product was the Caspian Sea Monster. However, when the Soviet Union collapsed, the program was scrapped and the plane was abandoned. It has since been retrieved as part of a plan to turn the Caspian Sea Monster into its very own tourist attraction. Still, it hasn't managed to make it off the shores of the Caspian Sea just yet. Number 7. The Plane in the Woods. Recently, people on Google Maps have been noticing a random Boeing 727 parked in the middle of the forest. Naturally, it raised a few questions. The aircraft can be seen from satellite images in a small patch of Oregon woodland, but it's not actually abandoned like most people think. It was acquired by an engineer named Bruce Campbell, who converted the aircraft into his own private home. Cool. It reportedly cost him $100,000, then another $100,000 just to get the airplane onto his property. Campbell then turned the interior of the plane into a modern home, complete with all the original equipment. It's like a spacious apartment, just over 1,000 square feet. It's very cozy and warm, and perfect for a single guy. And yes, the cockpit is still just like it was when Bruce purchased the aircraft. He even uses the original bathrooms. So, for all those urban explorers out there who want to discover the abandoned plane in the Oregon woods, maybe pump those brakes. Bruce doesn't really enjoy random people sneaking onto his property to take pictures of what is literally his house. Have you seen Bruce's plane on Google Earth? Do you think you would ever want to do a project like this? Let us know in the comment section down below. And if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 6. Abandoned DC in Iceland. In Iceland, there is part of an abandoned plane located on what is known as the Black Beach. The epic wreckage belongs to a United States Navy DC plane that crashed in the year 1973 after running out of fuel. Thankfully, everyone that was on the plane survived the traumatic incident, including the pilot. However, it later came out that the pilot made a big error, causing the plane to go down. He switched to the wrong fuel tank. This caused the plane to run out of fuel to keep going. Even all these years later, the plane can be found in pieces on the beach, dangerously close to the sea. One of these reasons the abandoned plane is particularly special is the landscape it's surrounded by. The plane is a pale white, with United States Navy still visible on its hull. It stands out dramatically against the surreal landscape of black rock and sand. But getting there is a challenge, and it's forbidden to drive to the plane, even with four-wheel drive. There are also no roads or tracks to help you find the crash site, so you would really have to adventure to see this beauty. The site kind of looks like it's from a science fiction movie. It's truly a photographer's paradise. Number 5. Kanso plane crash. The Kanso crash site in British Columbia, Canada is one of the most mysterious abandoned planes anywhere in the country. The only way to reach the destroyed aircraft is by hiking deep into the lush boreal forest on the coast of Vancouver Island. But how did the plane get there in the first place? It crashed shortly after takeoff back in February of 1945. The plane belonged to the Royal Canadian Air Force. It took off from Tofino, carrying 12 passengers and 880 pounds of bombs. Luckily, the bombs didn't explode upon impact and were quickly removed from the crash site. There definitely aren't bombs there any longer, and even though it sustained serious damage during the impact with the Earth, it remains still pretty much in one piece. The crash site was originally registered as an archaeological location and a point of historic interest. However, because the plane is so deep in the middle of the forest, it has been abandoned by Parks Canada. There are no signs, and the only way to get there is by bushwhacking through mud up to your waist. Are you bold enough to search for the Kanso plane crash? Let us know in the comments below. Number 4. Catalina Seaplane. In the hot and dry deserts of Saudi Arabia, there has been a seaplane abandoned in the middle of nowhere for over 50 years. It's a PBY-5A Catalina, a type of seaplane used by the military in the 1930s. It's in pretty rough shape today, stranded on a beach near the Gulf of Aqaba. The aircraft was purchased from the United States Navy by a man named Thomas Kendall, who converted the military aircraft into a luxury flying yacht for himself and his family to use. It was in 1960 when Kendall took his wife and their children on an adventure that ended in complete misery. They parked the aircraft in the exact same spot it is in today, with the intention of spending the night. However, the locals didn't really like the look of them. The following day when they woke up, they were greeted by men with machine guns. The aircraft was destroyed, the fuel tanks were blown apart, and Kendall and his family were captured by a local group of militias and handed over to the Saudi Arabian army as they thought they were Israeli commandos. Long story short, it was pretty obvious they weren't commandos, and the family was sent on their way without being harmed. It could have ended a lot worse for the family though. They were extremely lucky the men didn't just kill them, but they never did get their aircraft back, and it's still rotting in the middle of the desert. Number 3. Abandoned Albania. At the Kochov military base in Albania, there are all kinds of retired fighter aircrafts abandoned and neglected. Some of these planes included the legendary MiG-15, the MiG-19, and even the Shenyang J-5 and the Shenyang J-6. There are actually dozens of haunted-looking aircrafts here, just hiding in the creepy tunnels, seeming like they would never see the light of day or be flown again. The base was built in 1942, and it was still functioning just fine until in 1997 when the Albanian Civil War broke out and rebel fighters took control of the base. Today, MiG-15 aircrafts are mostly used by private owners as sports planes. Of course, unless you're North Korean, in which case you're still probably using the Chinese Shenyang J6. The aircrafts at the base in Albania have been collecting dust for decades, but in 2004, a few of them were auctioned off to help Albania pay for modernizations to the base. NATO announced back in 2018 that it would invest roughly $58 million in the decrepit base, meaning the abandoned planes here will probably be shipped out soon to some kind of plane graveyard. Number 2. Biplane in the bushes. In the north of Poland, close to the sea, a damaged biplane from a bygone era was discovered simply abandoned in the bushes. The biplane is an Antonov An-2, which is one of the greatest mass-produced biplanes in the entire world. This amazing feat of aerial engineering used a single engine to fly through the sky, though it was developed not for war, but for agriculture and forestry. The Soviets were the ones to mass-produce the biplane, starting in the year 1946. It was extremely durable and able to land and take off from less than ideal runways. The biplane in the 40s was used for crop dusting, atmospheric sampling, and for fighting forest fires. There were lightly armed combat variants, though they weren't actually used very often. As for where the biplane in the bushes came from, it was probably forgotten by the Russians, though nobody can say when or why. It does look pretty cool though. And number 1, Russian Air Force Museum. The Central Air Force Museum in Russia is one of the weirdest aviation museums in the whole world. It's located near Moscow and houses one of the largest collections of aircrafts anywhere. It has 137 aircrafts on display, along with espionage equipment from the Cold War, interesting war instruments, and fascinating uniforms. However, the history behind the museum is more than a little odd. The museum was found in 1958, just after the local airbase shut down. At the time, there were only 6 airplanes and a few aircraft guns, mostly left over from the base. But the museum grew and grew, collecting more and more aircrafts. The main hall was pretty much destroyed by a mysterious fire in 2005, at which point it seemed like the museum and its displays could be abandoned. But repairs were done, and a new hangar was even built to bring in some more abandoned planes to be put on display, plus a new exhibition hall in 2020. Perhaps the most hilariously Russian thing about the museum is that up until 1999, it was closed to the outside public, because it displayed prototypes that the Russian government felt were classified. Leave it up to them to do something like this, right? Today, though, it's open to everybody. Thanks for watching. Which of these creepy planes is your favorite? Would you want to go visit any of them? Let me know in the comments. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit subscribe for all the latest amazing videos from the channel. See you next time.